Hello, Mick. Welcome to the GSA podcast with former winners, jury members, ambassadors, and other stakeholders. I'm really happy that you decided to spend some of your Sunday doing this with us. So thank you for that. And to people who doesn't know you, I know you have a pretty known company, and you're also pretty well known in the ecosystem in the Nordic. But this is for the entire Global Startup Award, so it would be nice to hear a little bit about your own journey getting to where you are today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be a part of this whole Global Startup Awards and Nordic Startup Awards as well. I think to make a long story short, I've been working with companies that are scaling for the last 20 years and spent the last 8 years in New York and moved back to Denmark 2 years ago. I've helped companies from Europe scale in the US, and now I have my own company called Good Monday, and we're based out of Copenhagen and London. And we help companies with their office services. So we're a digital platform that helps them take care of everything they need.
So Mick, you were the winner on the Nordic level, and you're now going to compete on the global level in the category called Best Newcomer. And that's a category where the competition is quite fierce because you have a lot of attention for this category. Since you won, what's the most crazy thing that happened to you or the company?
Well, besides COVID-19, let's talk about something else. I think the best thing about winning an award is that you get third-party validation. And for the entire team, it's super motivating to actually win awards. And it's nice to be validated one way or the other. Since we won, a ton of stuff has happened. We kept on growing, we kept on scaling. We entered London and set up a team. And we got a brand new platform and identity in place. So there's a ton of stuff has happened on the company level. And again, when you're in a streak where people start to validate you, you start to get awards, the newspapers are around you, then often you get that positive synergy around when good things happen, it just continues. So we're definitely going to compete again in this year's Nordic Startup Awards, but not as Best Newcomer, but as I don't even know what the category is. Company something of the year.
Could be Startup of the Year.
Startup of the Year. Because again, every time you sit down and go for something, it's like being like every competition makes you want to compete. And for the entire team, it's all about figuring out how to win and what we need to do better to actually be rewarded with such a category. So it's always nice with the competition element in everything that you do. And we compete every day on our KPIs, on our customers, on the best service, but also competing on validation from third parties is a major thing.
So Mick, after you won Best Newcomer in the Nordic, crazy things has happened worldwide, and it's called COVID. And we all know about it, and it has definitely impacted our private life. But as founders, as entrepreneurs, it's even more disruptive in your daily life because you have to change everything. I would love to hear from you, like your personal experience. What was the biggest surprise to you in how this changed the way that we are working in the office space? Because that's your industry. That's something that you work with on a daily level as a software as a service.
Yeah, it's fun when you say office space, because Good Monday we've been moving towards a remote first culture. So not a remote friendly, but a remote first. And actually before COVID, we moved into a remote first culture. So it's all about figuring out how to work best in the workspace. And the workspace is home, cafes, parks, office, and so forth. And I truly believe that we were on this path towards being remote first in general. And COVID just accelerated that whole transformation. Basically, when you look at the office space, like right now we're in Copenhagen, and things are almost back to normal. We have all our companies back now. There is no one left. So we have 100% of our clients back at the office. It's not with the same momentum. It's not the same capacity, mainly because of two things. One, some people got terminated during COVID. And two, people start to work more from home because you also need to have some kind of social distancing. And it's also, if in the old days, which is 3 months ago, if you came to the office and said, I don't want to be disturbed today, then it was okay. But today, if you don't want to be disturbed, don't go to the office. And I think it's fun that 100 years ago, or in 1926, Henry Ford invented the 40-hour work week. And it's 100 years ago right now. And between 1926 and 2020, we've landed on the moon. The internet was invented. A ton of stuff has happened, but we haven't changed the pattern of getting up in the morning, commuting to work, and doing something where we're sitting next to each other as sheep, looking into a screen, to then go home and do something else and have a private life. Where I think the whole transformation that's been happening the last 10 years is more about figuring out, instead of having work-life balance, we're moving towards having life balance, where one of the items, like there's health, there's family, there's friends, there's kids, there is work, there is personal growth and development. All of that needs to go into the same bucket. And I see here, when it comes to the workspace, the office space, the way that we work, it's more about figuring out, how do I get the most out of my true potential? How do I make sure that I can actually contribute to a company? So we see a huge change in all of this. And in the future, we'll probably see something new. Instead of a 40-hour work week, which will still be in the same premise, because we're still the same. Like when it comes to our mindset, it's difficult to change that fast. But I think we're moving more towards having a system where you work 1 day from home, 4 days at the office, 2 days from home, 3 days at the office, 3 days from home, 2 days at the office, all depending on your skills, if you're a knowledge worker, and what you do. Because for some, when you see senior execs, 86% of them, if you ask Gallup, can actually work from home and have the same thing, because they have direction. They know what to do, and they know how to motivate through a digital platform. Where you see it's only 14% of junior personnel that can actually work from home, because they lack that direction and they don't know what to do. And that's also extremely stressful if you're asked to work from home, especially in this period. There's been so much stress from people who don't know what to do. So I think that's one of the big parts. And for us personally, we're looking into, how can we secure well-being, mentally and physically? How can we secure safety? And again, it has a lot to do with cleaning and just making sure that you can sanitize and all that stuff. And how do you make sure that you actually have an office that people want to go to? Because you need to give them direction. You need to give them a common bond around direction and brand. And we need to feel like a family, like we need to be together on a mission. And the office space is a point of gathering. So it's not something where we can just say no more office space, because you need people to know the direction. That's a long answer.
But it's a very interesting answer. And when you give this explanation, it also makes me feel that there's a lot of new technologies coming to be added to the workspace. Because you are mentioning that now the office space is a place where culture is created. That's where you get your directions. And at the moment, we all know the tools that are available for interacting from home with the rest of the team. And do you think that there's going to be a lot of new innovations, a lot of new technologies that will kind of help fill out that thing that you are explaining is often what you find in the physical workspace?
Yes. So there's going to be a ton of different things that are going to shift. We can see that we shifted from yoga at the office to online yoga, which also meant that if you had 5 branches, suddenly it was company-wide. But we also started sending food home. We had personal gifts sent home to all the employees, because acknowledgement and appreciation is something that's extremely valuable. So we see a lot of patterns changing. I think for gathering people, we saw a lot of the companies that were on Good Monday, their reaction to, now you can go back, but lunch wasn't an option because you couldn't do communal lunch. Then people didn't want to return to the office, because you need to have some kind of benefit to actually get out of bed and go to the office if you can do the same amount of work at home. So in the future, I think there's going to be a focus on development. How can I personally develop myself? And that needs to be in interaction with human beings. And I think the best example is, if you're a freelancer, you go to a cafe and work, or you rent a space, or you're at a flexible office space or co-working, because at some point you need energy, inspiration, you need to see new stuff. So you're not just at the apartment. The same happens with all employees in all these larger companies, because you need to go out there and feel people. You need to sit down and have valuable discussions in person. You need to meet and feel that you can feel energy and be a social human being, because it's not going to change that now we can all just be without each other. You saw that when we opened after the lockdown. People want to be together, not necessarily hug, but they need to have a beer too, and they need to be together. So, and then there's going to be a ton of new services. So one thing is what's happening in a digital way. Another thing is, what do you want to give the employees when they get in here? And I think the level of what an office is going to offer is going to be much, much higher. So there's going to be a ton of new stuff for the offices to compete against the homes. So suddenly it's kind of like, what can I give you that you can't get at home? Because I need to get you into the office because I know you're going to develop. I know you're going to get more direction, and I know that we can be stronger as a team.
So Mik, you know the startup community really well. Good Monday is a startup itself, but I also know that your product is also very much relevant for more big companies, maybe more companies with more history, that maybe have a more conservative way of working together. Do you think that there will be a shift within these more traditional companies as well because of this COVID-19 experience that they had?
Yeah, so it's kind of fun what happened with Good Monday during COVID-19, because when you look at Good Monday, it's always been seen as kind of like the extra stuff that you can get on top of everything. So the extra Friday ban, we'll say, and just having everything in one place is nice and neat. But moving into a recession where you need to let go of some people and where you can't just afford to buy 2 extra hands, suddenly having full flexibility, full control, and not be vulnerable because you have actually one place where you can pause everything has made us one of the tools that's going to be leading through a recession. And even at the corporates, we see that as well. And like during COVID, we closed a client that was 350 employees. So we see that they start to also go in that direction, because when you let go of hands, when you let go of people in general, then suddenly you need to be more structured and lean and go towards that part. What we also see in the bigger ones, compared to the ones that are 30 to 70, and looking at the ones that are 150 to 400, is that the 150 to 400, they're back to business as usual. They haven't done a lot. They're all in the office. When you look at the PVCs of this world and all the other ones, they're all back at the office. Some in senior management that are commuting a lot, they choose to stay home 1 day a week maybe, but they're going to be back to business as usual. And there's going to be some small shifts because the new ones they're going to hire are going to be younger. They're going to be used to actually being a better worker if they work from home, or if they work remote, or if they go to their summer cottage, or if they take 1 week at Bali. So they're going to be demanding more flexibility at the workspace. So right now we won't see that much. In 10 years, we'll see the second wave of people actually wanting to take control of their lives and work in a different way with new patterns. So I think everything is going to be just like it was in February in a month when it comes to the larger ones. To the smaller ones, we're going to see a whole new world.
It's really nice to hear, these positive stories that comes out of the COVID, because basically what you're saying is that you have a better situation now to expand your business than before the COVID-19.
Yeah, we're much better off. And like it's always bad to have a global pandemic, but when we've been preaching that with our system you can save a ton of hours and you can save a lot of money and you can be hassle-free and all that stuff, it's been for some of the larger companies, it's been, that's fine, but we already have 2 people hired to do that. Now they had to let go of those 2 people, and now suddenly our platform is more relevant than ever. So we just see that this is for us a great thing, because now you're structuring stuff. And looking at the 2009 recession, the same companies that were structuring, giving flexibility, control, those are the ones who are at their peak right now. And they also peaked through the last recession.
So before we were talking about that actually Denmark and the Nordic in general is getting pretty much back to normal. And in Denmark specifically, you only have to have 1 meter of distancing. And it makes it quite, feasible to open up the office entirely actually. But if you look at this on a global level, and I know that you already expanded the business to several countries, and I know that you, from a network perspective, are in contact with a lot of people in the industry from different parts of the world, and these countries that are still in some form of lockdown, or where we can see that it can take 6 months longer or maybe even more, how do you think this is going to impact the business model of running office spaces?
Yeah, so and that's a great question as well. So I've been talking to a ton of my founder friends in the US, and I was actually at a webinar this morning with a lot of different office providers and real estate agents. And the fun thing is when you're listening in to founders in the US based out of San Francisco and Connecticut and New York, you can't believe that we're on that we're at the same time and place, because they're for me, there is like almost no more COVID. I know that we all need to sanitize and wash our hands and keep some distance. But over there, it's they're talking about how to get out of lockdown. What will happen in the future, 3 to 6 months ahead? Because for them, they haven't seen it. All their buildings are shut down. They can't leave their homes. So when they're talking about it, it's mostly because they can see that the square footage is going down. They can see that offices right now went in and took their offices into half. And they're talking about if we will ever come back to normal. They're in another way because they can't see normal because they're not in it. We're back. We see normal because for us, we're back at track. But in New York, where it's still kind of bloody, it's difficult for them to see the new reality. And for some of them, when you have more than 1 million square feet that's empty, and when you hear the customers calling you every day to tell you that they want to withdraw square feet as well, and they're looking into 6 feet of distancing in the future, and they want to do that permanently. When you hear Shopify saying that they're looking into maybe closing down their office in general, and Twitter taking all their employees home, then suddenly there's a new world opening. And I think that we're going to see something totally new in the US especially. But when we're back, when things are back to normal, then we're creatures of habit. Then we'll have to wait and see. But right now, everybody's talking about a new normal because they can't see what we're seeing. And I think that's another fun thing, because now we have offices in London, and looking into how much we're learning and how fast it's going to be so great for us when we're starting opening up in London again, because now we have the playbook. We know how to roll out. We know the mentality of what do you think about, what about our well-being? What about our safety? How do we communicate and get together? So it's extremely nice for us that we actually had a country that opened and have office spaces that are open and fully running and fully functional. So we can take that knowledge into the next one. And then it's going to be fun to see how much they can learn in the US from Europe, if they're going to learn anything. But let's see.
It's interesting. So this thing that Twitter is gonna completely change the way that they are, having their employees, they're gonna have them remotely instead of having them in the office, for example.
And so they're not going to, so they said in the future, everybody who's a knowledge worker can decide if they want to work from home. But they also said in the same instance, but we also can't wait to be back at the office. So one thing is that you can choose to work from home. Another thing is, if you're in workshops, if you're with people, if you have an inner circle that you're highly connected to, where you need to develop and you need to go forward, the office will not disappear. It will still be a place because we need to meet. And if you don't have an office, you need to rent space every time you meet. And it's not your space, it's someone else's identity. You can't really feel anything. You can't sit down and do stuff. So I think right now we're looking into this because we're in the midst of it. And that's like humankind can just only see what they're in. And I think that when we get to the other side of it, we'll slowly fall back into the same patterns. But now we know that we can work from home. Now we know that we're better when we do some tasks remote. And maybe it's not home, maybe it's somewhere else. But again, Zoom, Docs, Box, everything, right? Has just made it possible for us to do whatever we want.
So you actually think that these things that you experience when you talk to your network from the US, for example, is basically not necessarily a big change in the long term, but it's more like a change here and now because they are still in the middle of the situation. But you think when it comes back to normal, they will kind of shift back to the normal way a little bit?
Yeah, extremely fast. And then there was another thing that came out of my morning webinar was in New York and San Francisco, they're really talking about upgrading their office. So there's going to be fewer people. They're going to be there in different shifts, but they need to have the coolest office ever with as many services as possible, because now they're competing against homes and they're competing against other workplaces where you can do it. So one thing is having a flexible work setup. Where can you work and how do you do it? Another thing is to create the best office environment. So all offices are going to upgrade, but they're also going to be more modular. So they're going to not have fixed ceiling. They're going to move around in another way. to take care of the shifts. And like when you look at an office like ours, with the way that we've been working the last 4 weeks, instead of having space for, I don't know, 35, we actually have space for 70. So suddenly it's a new world we're looking into when it comes to real estate. And that part is like, I don't even want to comment on that one because I have no clue what's going to happen on the real estate part.
So basically what you're saying is that it will be more about quality over quantity. So you will rather have like less people in the office, but having them in shifts, and then make sure that when they're in the office, it's a greater experience for the workers when they're there.
If you're more productive when you're at the office and you love being there, and it gives you a kick, and and it just makes you more happy, then you should always be at the office, of course. If it doesn't, and if you're more productive if you stay at home for one day or you do something else, then you should stay from home. Like it's all about figuring out how you work best. And sometimes we need to meet. Like we just had an offsite in our management group. We had to meet because we needed to make sure that we had full alignment. We needed to make sure that we all understood the strategy. And we needed to look into each other's eyes in person. And we needed to draw on a whiteboard, and we needed to do all that stuff. And it was like fantastic because we needed it. But if it was just like an orientation about numbers, then we didn't have to get out of our chair and meet. So it's all about what you do and why you do it.
Great, man. Det er sgu godt det her. Skal vi prøve at hoppe videre? The næste question there, do you think that the commercial real estate sector will continue to attract adequate interest from investors in the future? That's the thing you said that you don't really know, right? That you can only speculate. You have no clue what's going to happen. But kan vi prøve spørgsmålet alligevel?
Det kan vi godt.
Ja. So Mik, you operate a software for the office spaces, but that also means that you are very much aware of how the office industry works. And from a real estate point of view, do you think that there will be the same availability for the interest of the investors in the future?
That's a great question again. So it's difficult to say anything. You saw Google give up on their new real estate, and they actually passed on their new building and their new offices. And we see some of the larger companies not going in and taking on more space. I think they're going to be more dedicated in smaller space. That's just more personal. Again, we've been preaching the last 2 years about creating a workspace and an office that's present and that gives you something that makes you feel unique. But it hasn't been a necessity. Post-COVID, being present and giving you that extra of something is going to be a necessity. And when it comes to real estate and going into all of this, then I think we're going to shrink offices, and then we're going to be more present inside them. So we're not going to build up bigger offices. And that goes that's opposite of when you look at you need more space because there is social distancing, but because we're also going to be fewer people, it's going to be fun to see how that's going to react. But my best guess is that it's going to suffer for 4 years, and then it's going to go back on track right after. But again, I'm only speculating. If I knew, I would put my money where my mouth is, but I don't know anything.
So Mik, when you look at office spaces, we also have co-working spaces. And how do you think their business model is going to be impacted in a post COVID-19?
Yeah, co-working spaces is a funny creature post-COVID because freelancers who were sent home and worked from home for the last 3 months, and especially in the US where they're going to work from home for 6 months, when they suddenly see that they can save some money because their business is bleeding, I don't think that co-working with a huge overhead is where they're going to go back to. And they need to be out. So again, like I said earlier, you need inspiration and you need to see other people. But if you're paying $600 for a seat at a co-working and you're also working from home 3 days a week, then suddenly you need to reconsider what the value is and what it's giving you. So I think they're going to suffer on the freelancers and all the small business units that are going to save money in time of need. And then we're going to see some of them die on the way. I don't think they're going to survive. And then we're going to see others blossom. So what you need is a big war chest, because you need to give flexibility and you need to lower your prices. So you need to get people in. And I think we'll see some of the larger players like WeWork go in and give free space for a lot of people for a long time, at least for the first 12 months. So I think there's going to be a lot of companies giving back. And then there's the larger players, which is like, again, WeWork has it as well, but also the Notels of this world, where you have spaces where you pay an overhead for them to take care of the services within. And it's going to be fun to see, because they have a flexible solution, if they're actually going to thrive through this, or if they're going to bleed as well. And my best guess is when you have a larger company, you're going to see if you can keep your square meters. If you were scaling, you're going to stay in the same space and see if you can make it work for the next 18 to 20 months, because you need to get to the other side of all of this. So the next 18 to 20 months, we're going to see everyone that's within real estate, co-working, flexible office spaces. I think they're going to suffer going through this. Some of them are also going to thrive, because some have terminated their current lease and moved into a flexible lease where they can adjust with the number of personnel, because flexibility and control and being less vulnerable is what a recession is all about. That's my best guess.
And again, it's aligned with the other answers you gave, that you feel there's going to be a period where things are going to be a bit disrupted, but then after a while, things will pretty much could go back to normal again after 12, 20 months, depending on if the thing has changed completely, the whole business model has changed entirely.
Yeah, and again, there is going to be a new normal. Like, we are going to see a new normal world. It's just not going to be a totally new world. We're just going to make adjustments to make it better. And that's what happens when the world is upside down. You need to make adjustments, you need to adapt, and you need to overcome. And then looking into the new patterns, you can see that there was something you didn't have in your former life that you have in your new life. And there is something that you miss from your former life that you also want to bring into the new life. And in this, you want to be with people, you want to develop, and you want to be on a journey with someone, but you also want to be concentrate. You also want to have less commute. You also want to be more focused. So there is going to be this mixture of all of it. It's just not going to be either or. It's not like we work from home or we work from offices. We're going to take the best of everything. And I think the companies with the best management that have trust in their employees and have trust in their system, they're going to be the ones who overcome. And those companies are going to be the ones that are going to thrive through this, but also where you're going to see talent go.
So from what I can understand from your explanation is that you think that things are going to change, but not necessarily it's going to be like to one extreme or to the other extreme, but this situation will definitely change how co-working spaces are functioning and how office spaces in general are going to work. But can you say, do you feel like you have enough feeling about it right now for how this will impact creativity and how you're going to create different cultures and this kind of elements of the workspace? Do you think you can see where it's going already?
Yeah, I can see where it's going for Good Monday, and I can also see it with some of the companies running on Good Monday platform. So basically, if you take culture is going to be stronger after this, mainly because when people are working from home and they actually can't go to the office, there is an element of trust that needs to be incorporated in the culture. You need to trust each other. There's also direction. You need to be more clear of what needs to happen, what's the deliverables and what's our goals, and what is the overall objective of the company. So culture is going to get a new way of looking at it, because in the old days, culture was all about having a beer on a Friday. That's where we get together. Now culture is all about asking in, figuring out what you do, because you don't see each other. So you need to be more formal. You need to be communicating even more, like over-informing. And over-informing and communication is key for great work culture. But when you have people surrounding you, you think that they know, and you meet once in a while, but now you need to be extremely explicit. So culture is going to be with much more communication and information and much more direction that is much more clear. And I think that's going to be a big step up. And again, this is all about having like founders, CEOs who actually knows how to do this, because it's also discipline. It's not something that you just do from day to day. You need to learn it. And I think some are going back to school on some of this.
Yeah.
When it comes to creativity, I think that's going to take a hit for a while. So we are creative in the beginning of all of this, and in the midst of it, we can see stuff happening. But there's a ton of creativity happening when we're together, and when we start to spitball stuff, and we use each other as mirrors on some of the stuff that we have tried out. So I think it's going to go down a bit, and then it's going to go up again with full speed. But now we have done all our tasks. And one thing is sitting down, working on tasks and getting them done. Another thing is then developing new stuff, using your imagination to create something new. And we're so much better when we're together on some of this. So I think that's going to take a small step down, and then it's going to come back with full speed.
It sounds like depending on who you are and what your strengths are as a leader, or even as part of the team, it will be a challenge. So and it can be a challenge because you're talking about, you have to over communicate, you have to focus more on making sure that everyone knows the daily picture, but also the big strategy picture, because you don't have this daily interactions. From your own experience with Good Monday, how did you change this? What did you do differently, just on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so again, I think before COVID, so instead of, when you do remote first and not remote friendly, then you need to act like nobody is at the office. That's also why when you do a town hall, everybody needs to be on their own screen, because we need to act like we're all out there, because or else the people in London, on Ghana, on Ukraine, or in Sao Paulo, they're going to be left out. And I need to make sure that they have as much information as the rest of the team. So I need to communicate much more. So what we did was we just turned up the volume of information, and we made sure that everything was company-wide. But also, when you over-communicate, over-inform, somebody will hear stuff twice or maybe 5 times, but that's okay. Because the most important thing is that everybody knows. So we company-wide can talk about the same things. And I think when people say that they're like a remote-friendly office or company, often forget the remote workers, because you only see what you see and you feel like everybody knows. And if they don't, they can just ask, but they don't know what to ask. So you need to, as a responsible founder or CEO, you need to over-inform in all directions. And I think if you can master that discipline, then you can lead your company into World 2.0 post COVID-19. And you can actually be the one where you can make that culture even stronger. And there's a lot of stuff happening. So again, what we also did in the beginning is I called everyone, and we had everybody in teams, and we made sure to over-inform. We had the parties. When we had a release party that was supposed to be at the Copenhagen office, we made that online, of course, but we also sent champagne home to all employees, and we sent like bags of chips and stuff. So everybody was eating the same and drinking the same while we were having this release party online, because now you're doing it remote first. Now everybody's equal. And the best way to prove that you can do that is when everybody's in lockdown, because then you have no choice. So in the future, we're just going to keep the same mentality as lockdown when we do information and communication.
I think that's super interesting. Also, you mentioned that when you come to the office every day, you think that everyone knows what they're supposed to know, but maybe in reality, it's not like that. So is that somehow a discovery that you got out of this situation, that you actually didn't communicate enough? You could see that when you kind of had to communicate more.
Yeah, so we changed this pre-COVID, right? So we're in the midst of setting this up, because we also knew that. We knew that there were people who didn't have the same information, and you say something at the water cooler and you meet someone in the hallway. But what it proved when we went into lockdown and everybody was remote was that we actually had a structure where everybody felt happy and informed and with direction. Because it's super stressful to be in lockdown in the country where your office is. But when you're outside that country in a different kind of lockdown, and you don't know what's happening, and people are getting terminated all around you, and the world is on fire, you need to know that, that your position is safe. You need to know that people are doing everything within their power, and you need to be informed.
Okay, Mik, as a last thing, And I know you're a very optimistic guy. You know, I have met you several times and you're always full of good energy. So I'm sure you have a good answer to this. As a post-COVID situation, in a post-COVID society, what are the 3 biggest business opportunities within your industry that you can identify as it is now?
Yeah, but there is a ton of stuff, but I think the 3 biggest ones for us is, one, we're going into a recession. People need to have full flexibility, they need to have full control, and they need to be less vulnerable. And that's exactly what Good Monday's platform, that's what we do. That's why we're created. So in the midst of everything that happened right now, people had to call a dozen different service providers. They needed to find their contracts. They needed to figure out their termination period. They needed to call all of them. And it has been a huge hassle. Now getting back to the office, they need to figure out who's all the service providers. How can we get them back? How can we set them up? Which kind of contracts? Are they flexible or whatever? And some of the people have been operating all those contracts. They're not at the company anymore because they were let go. So now it's even more complicated. So for Good Monday, the first one is, because we have full flexibility, control, and overview, and you're less vulnerable, now you can just plug and play. So with our clients, they just went to the platform and then they paused all their services at once. And they don't have a ton of different contracts, contact people. They have one place they log in. They pause their office. Getting back, they just reopen. And then they can control how many people and how much. So that's one thing that's extremely good, because we're a recession tool. We want to be the rosé and the Friday bars, and you can pick that if you want. And that's going to happen a lot post-COVID. But we're also that flexible place where everybody can log in and take care of the office. So everybody can become a workspace manager one way or the other. The second one is, we just opened in the UK. So when all companies terminate or pause all their services at once, that means they have to come back. And then suddenly, instead of going back to their usual services, now they can actually pick Good Monday and get everything centralized in one place. They can pick and choose the service providers they want and all the services they want. And now they have the flexibility to adjust all the time. So it's a huge win for us, because now we can actually give the companies the product that they need in time of need. So I think that's a big thing. The last one is that we're going to see the office win a totally new position of being the gathering point for brand and identity for all companies. And we've been preaching the office because we love our office, but we love all the offices out there, because when people are together, magic happens. And happy employees create a better business. That's it. So we're social human beings, and the office is going to get to be a new kingdom of gathering, inspiration, creativity, and development. And it's a place, it's home away from home. So I see that's 3 pretty good signs of what we're looking into with Good Monday. And again, we were made for this. So